Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast, Is It Worth It? Today we are heading to Budapest, Hungary, the thermal bath capital of Europe, the city built on more than 100 natural hot springs, and the only major European capital where a four-star hotel still costs less than €120 per night in 2026. In this episode, we cover exactly what Budapest costs across every traveler type, why the 6th District's historic Airbnb ban is reshaping where you sleep and what you pay, the best and worst months to visit, and why December is both the best and most expensive month on the calendar. The 3 specific logistics traps that catch first-timers out at the airport and in the ruin bar district, whether the thermal baths live up to the marketing, and our honest, is it worth it verdict for 5 traveler types: backpacker, mid-range couple, family, luxury, and digital nomad. Europe's cheapest capital, or about to stop being, the 2026 answer is closer than you think.
It really is. It's at this fascinating tipping point right now. I mean, we're looking at a destination that has literally defined the phrase European budget travel for over a decade.
Right.
But 2026 is the year the ground is just fundamentally shifting beneath it. We are seeing these massive macroeconomic policies completely rewrite the rules of how you actually visit the city.
Which is wild because, just imagine you are standing in a 16th century stone chamber. There's this thick steam rising from a 38-degree pool of mineral water up toward a domed ceiling, and it's got this pierced-colored glass.
Yeah, the Rudas bath.
Exactly. You're soaking in the exact same water that people have bathed in for over 450 years. And as you sit there, you realize that your entire day, like the 4-star hotel you woke up in, this centuries-old thermal bath you are currently enjoying, and the incredible rich dinner you are going to eat tonight, all of it costs less than a basic windowless chain hotel room near a train station in London or Paris.
It's basically a time warp reality.
It totally is.
Right.
But how is that economic magic trick still possible in 2026? Like, are we looking at a permanent cheat code for European travel, or is this a window that is rapidly slamming shut?
It is absolutely a window that is closing. And I think that's why dissecting the actual on-the-ground reality for this deep dive is so vital right now.
Because things are changing fast.
Very fast. To understand the gravity of the shift happening in 2026, we first have to really establish the baseline of just how vast the current price gap is between Budapest and the rest of Western Europe.
Right, because when we throw around the phrase budget capital, that can mean a lot of different things to different people.
Exactly.
So let's ground this in reality. How far does your money actually go here compared to, say, the usual suspects like Paris or London?
Well, it stretches to a degree that fundamentally alters how you plan your days. Let's look at the daily budget brackets.
Okay, lay them out for me.
Right now, a budget traveler, so someone staying in dorms, eating street food, taking public transit, they can comfortably operate in Budapest for roughly 45 to 75 euros a day.
Wow.
Yeah. A mid-range traveler, like someone splitting a nice hotel, eating sit-down meals with wine, paying for major attractions, they're spending 90 to 160 euros a day. And the luxury bracket, we're talking 5-star hotels, private transfers, Michelin-starred tasting menus that starts at around just 180 euros per day.
I just want to pause on those numbers for a second, because they almost sound like a mistake if you've recently planned a trip to Western Europe.
You really do.
If I take those exact same lifestyle brackets, budget, mid-range, luxury, and drop them into London or Paris, what happens to the math?
Oh, the math just explodes. You're immediately looking at a premium of 45 to 55% across the board just to maintain the exact same standard of living.
That is insane.
But the most striking contrast isn't even London or Paris. The starkest reality check happens when you compare Budapest to its immediate geographic neighbors.
Ah, you mean the Austro-Hungarian siblings.
Precisely. Let's look at a standard 4-star hotel room in the city center during, say, the pleasant spring or autumn shoulder season.
Okay, the prime time.
Right. In Budapest, that room runs 80 to 140 euros per night. Now, get on a train and travel just 3 hours west to Vienna.
Just a short ride away.
Exactly. To secure that exact same level of 4-star comfort in central Vienna, you are suddenly paying 180 to 280 euros a night.
Wow.
And if you go 6 hours northwest to Prague, it's 150 to 220 euros.
Okay, let's unpack this for everyone listening. Why does that massive gap exist? Because Vienna and Budapest are historically joined at the hip, right? They were the twin capitals of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. They share the same grand architectural DNA. So why does a bed in one cost double the price of a bed in the other just a few hours down the train line?
Well, it really comes down to the vastly different economic paths these two cities were forced down over the last century.
The Iron Curtain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Vienna remained firmly in the West, accumulating wealth, maintaining its imperial polish, and essentially developing a high-cost, high-wage economy.
Right.
Budapest, on the other hand, spent decades behind the Iron Curtain. That communist-era economic isolation created a massive wealth and currency disparity that honestly still echoes today.
Even now.
Yeah, even as Budapest has rapidly modernized and integrated into the global tourism market, the underlying cost of labor, property, and local goods remains tethered to a distinct Central European economic reality.
Which perfectly explains the incredible value right now.
It does.
But here is where the narrative takes a sharp turn for anyone planning a trip today, because that era of unchecked, infinite, cheap inventory is actively being legislated out of existence.
Yes.
We really have to talk about the 6th District and the 2026 Airbnb ban, because this feels like an absolute earthquake for European travel logistics.
It's huge. It is the single most important policy shift in the city's modern tourism history.
So break down the geography of it first. Where exactly is the 6th District?
The District 6, which is formerly known as Teutožváros, is essentially the beating heart of tourist Budapest.
Okay.
It houses the State Opera, the Grand Andrassy Avenue, parts of the historic Jewish Quarter, and it is the epicenter of the massive ruin bar circuit.
So prime real estate.
Very prime. In October 2024, the local residents held a referendum and voted to completely ban short-term rentals, taking full effect in 2026.
But why target the 6th District specifically? Like, was it just noise complaints from the ruined bars keeping people up?
I mean, noise was part of it, but it goes much deeper than noise. It's about the fundamental livability of the city for the locals.
How so?
You have to understand the mechanism of how these neighborhoods evolved. You had these historic residential tenement buildings where slowly, unit by unit, long-term renters were just pushed out.
And replaced by tourists?
Exactly. Replaced by short-term holidaymakers coming specifically for the dense nightlife. You ended up with residential buildings where 80% of the apartments were just transient party pads.
Oh, wow. So no actual community left.
Right. It hollowed out the community and artificially spiked housing costs for locals to a breaking point.
And what's fascinating to me is that this didn't stay a local neighborhood issue. The national government watched this referendum pass and immediately stepped in to amplify it.
They absolutely did. The Hungarian national government saw the writing on the wall. They implemented a complete moratorium on issuing any new Airbnb licenses across the entirety of Budapest.
Wow, the whole city.
The whole city. While simultaneously hitting existing short-term rentals with massive tax hikes, the economy minister, Martin Nagy, was remarkably blunt about it.
What did he say?
His exact quote was that the market cannot grow further.
Talk about drawing a line in the sand. So we have this massive legislative hammer coming down. What does this mean mechanically for you, the listener, who is trying to book a room for this summer or autumn? Like, where do all those people who used to book Airbnbs actually go?
Well, we are seeing a massive, immediate displacement effect. With the 6th District inventory vanishing, all of that intense demand, particularly from people who want to be walking distance to iconic ruin bars like Simpla Kurt or Instant Fogus, is being funneled directly back into the traditional hotel market.
And I imagine hotel operators aren't just absorbing that demand out of the goodness of their hearts, right?
Not a chance. The laws of supply and demand are undefeated. In the first quarter of 2026 alone, we have seen hotel prices in Central Pest firm upwards by 8 to 15%.
Okay, wait, let me push back on this a bit. If hotel prices are instantly creeping up 15% just in the first quarter, isn't Budapest effectively losing its crown anyway?
That's the big question.
I mean, are we looking at the next Lisbon or Barcelona where the local charm just gets entirely priced out by its own popularity? Are we just too late to the party?
That is the fear. The context is super crucial here. A 15% bump on an €80 hotel room is an increase of €12.
Right.
A 15% bump on a €200 room in Paris is a very, very different mathematical reality.
That makes sense.
Budapest is not yet Lisbon or Barcelona, where the baseline has already surged into the stratosphere. It remains incredibly cheap by capital city standards.
So it's still a deal.
Yes, but the fundamental shift is psychological. The era of assuming Budapest will always be dirt cheap is over. The direction travel is firmly set upward.
It's such a delicate balancing act for a city. You want the tourism revenue, obviously, but you don't want to destroy the housing market for the people who actually live there.
Exactly.
And you can see them navigating this when you look at how they tax the tourists themselves. The tourist tax in Budapest is 1,000 Hungarian forint per person per night, which is roughly 2.5 euros.
Which is remarkably restrained when you look at the aggressive, almost punitive taxation being rolled out across Southern Europe right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Like Venice is now charging 5 euros just for a day tripper to walk through the streets without even taking up a bed.
Yeah, just to exist in the city.
Right. And Rome is slapping a 2 euro surcharge simply to stand in line at major attractions, and that's on top of the actual admission fee.
It's wild.
Budapest is fundamentally restructuring where you can sleep to protect its housing, but it isn't punishing you financially just for showing up.
Which makes sense, because you want people to come and experience the sheer physical scale of this place. Because before we dive into the specific months and the budgets, we really have to talk about the geography.
Definitely.
The physical layout of Budapest dictates everything about your experience.
It absolutely does. The city is essentially bisected right down the middle by the Danube River.
Okay.
On the west bank, you have Buda. It's hilly, it's lush with green space, and it's defined by winding roads and historic wealth.
Very scenic.
Very. On the east bank, you have Pest. Now, Pest is completely flat, highly dense, laid out in grid, and defined by massive late 19th century Habsburg architecture.
Right.
And they are stitched together by 7 magnificent bridges.
And lying directly beneath all of this, beneath the grand boulevards and the historic castles, is a total geological anomaly. The entire city is built on top of more than 100 natural thermal hot springs.
That geological luck fundamentally shaped the entire culture. It's not just some tourist gimmick.
No, it's a way of life.
The bathing culture is baked into the daily rhythm of the city. You have places like the Rudas bath, which was literally constructed during the Ottoman occupation in the 1500s.
Okay, but honestly, if I'm a listener thinking about this, doesn't a 16th century bath just mean it's dilapidated? Like, why would I want to swim in a 500-year-old tub? Is it actually hygienic?
That is a very common hesitation for sure.
Yeah.
But you have to understand how these baths function mechanically. These aren't just stagnant pools of medieval water.
Good to know.
The natural thermal springs provide this massive continuous flow of fresh, mineral-rich water that cycles through the pools constantly.
Ah.
The facilities themselves are rigorously modernized behind the scenes to meet very strict European health standards. What is 500 years old is the breathtaking architecture.
The aesthetics.
Right, the heavy stone pillars, the vaulted domes, the acoustics of the room. You're getting pristine modern hygiene inside a preserved historical monument.
It creates this sensory cocktail that you just cannot replicate anywhere else. I mean, you can wake up and walk through Ottoman history in a thermal bath, spend the afternoon walking down Parisian-style grand boulevards in Pest, drink a beer in the courtyard of a decommissioned World War II tenement building that's been saved by the ruin bar scene, and then eat a bowl of thick goulash made from a recipe untouched since 1894.
Yeah.
And you can do all of that for under 100 euros.
You really can. But the success of that 100-euro day relies heavily on a single variable, the calendar.
Timing is everything.
The month you choose to visit doesn't just dictate what you pack. It fundamentally changes the economic and cultural character of the entire trip.
So let's map that out. Let's go month by month, starting with the deep winter. If you book a flight for January or February, what is the reality on the ground?
Well, if we look at the mechanics of seasonal travel, January and February are structurally the most underrated months, but they require absolute honesty about the conditions.
Which means it's freezing.
It is genuinely aggressively cold.
Yeah.
We are talking daytime highs hovering between -2 and 5 degrees Celsius. The wind coming off the Danube is biting, and snow is a very real possibility throughout January.
But the payoff for braving that cold is the pricing floor, right?
Exactly. Accommodation drops to its absolute lowest point of the entire year. That 4-star hotel room that commands 140 euros in the autumn plummets to 70 or 90 euros in late January.
That's a huge drop.
And flights from the U.S. East Coast also hit their lowest average, around 450 to 500 euros round trip. Plus, the tourist crowds are practically non-existent.
And honestly, if you know how the city works, the cold isn't actually a negative. It unlocks a totally different vibe. Budapest has this incredible interior culture.
It was essentially designed for winter. The thermal baths, the ruin bars, the grand, opulent cafes like New York Cafe or Café Gerbeau with their heavy velvet curtains and mahogany, they all make infinitely more sense when it is freezing outside.
I have to describe the thermal shock experience for everyone because it is one of the most vivid memories you'll ever take away from travel. Oh, it's the best.
Imagine you are standing outside at the Szechenyi baths in January. The air is -2 degrees, the stone deck is literally freezing, and you are in nothing but a swimsuit.
Shivering.
And then you quickly lower yourself into this massive outdoor pool. The water is a perfect, enveloping 38 degrees. The steam is billowing off the surface so thickly you can barely see the yellow Baroque palace walls surrounding you.
It's magical.
Sitting in that steaming water while snowflakes melt on your shoulders is a visceral thrill.
It is the defining winter experience. But moving into March and April, the city thaws into the classic shoulder season. Temperatures rise to a much more hospitable 10 to 18 degrees Celsius.
And the street life starts to return. The cafe terraces open up, people start walking the Danube promenade again.
And crucially, the pricing remains highly favorable. You are generally looking at hotel rates 20 to 30% below the summer peak.
Good to know.
The crowds are manageable too, with one massive exception: the Easter long weekend.
Right, Easter gets busy. Easter brings a massive influx of regional European tourism, and central choke points like Castle Hill, the Chain Bridge, and Váci Utka become heavily congested.
Which brings us to May. And May is universally flagged as one of the 2 best months to visit.
May is spectacular. The temperature locks into this perfect 18 to 24 degree band. It is warm enough to hike up Gellert Hill without freezing, but cool enough that the city's stone architecture hasn't started baking yet.
And the prices.
Prices are still 15 to 25% below peak summer rates. You also have the Budapest Spring Festival injecting a massive amount of classical music and cultural programming into the city.
Is there any downside to May? Like, what's the catch?
Only logistical friction.
Yeah.
By May, the secret is out that the weather is great, which means the queues for major attractions, particularly the cashiers at the thermal baths, begin to really stretch out. You must transition to booking things online in advance.
Which is basically good training for the summer wall. June, July, and August. Peak heat, peak crowds, peak pricing.
To understand the summer in Budapest, you have to look at a map. This is a landlocked city in the heart of Central Europe.
Right.
There is no coastal sea breeze to flush the hot air out. In July and August, the temperature routinely hits 30 to 35 degrees, occasionally surging to 38 degrees Celsius.
That's stifling.
It is. The historic districts of Pest are highly dense stone environments. They absorb that heat all day and radiate it back all night. Walking around at 2 p.m. can become a genuinely oppressive, exhausting physical challenge.
And to add insult to injury, you are paying a massive premium to be exhausted. Hotel rates climb 30 to 45% higher than in the shoulder season. U.S. flight prices peak at an average of 700 to 750 euros.
Yeah, it's rough.
But the true logistical nightmare of the summer happens in mid-August. We have to warn people about the Sziget Festival.
Sziget is an absolute behemoth. It is a week-long music festival held on Óbuda Island in the Danube. It draws roughly 500,000 attendees.
Wait, what does 500,000 extra people actually do to the infrastructure of a city like this?
It completely maxes it out. Every hostel bed, every budget hotel, every available short-term rental is just absorbed by festival goers.
I can't even imagine the transit lines.
The public transport network routing toward the island runs at absolute crush capacity. Restaurants in Central Pest are totally overwhelmed.
So trying to plan a casual, relaxing sightseeing trip to Budapest during Sziget is basically like trying to book a quiet family weekend in Austin, Texas during SXSW. You only subject yourself to that chaos if you are actually holding a ticket to the festival.
That is exactly the right analogy. If you're not attending Sziget, you must check the August dates and book around it. Never book into it. The math and the crowds simply will not let you enjoy the city.
Which makes the arrival of September feel like a massive exhale. September is the other golden month.
It is the great reset. The intense heat breaks, dropping back down to crisp 18 to 25 degree days. The golden hour light hitting the Parliament building in September is legendary.
And the prices drop.
From an economic standpoint, yes, the accommodation algorithms reset, dropping prices right back down to those comfortable shoulder season levels. The ruin bars are still completely vibrant, but you aren't fighting 5 deep at the bar to get a drink.
October and November continue that downward trend, right?
Yes, these are the deep value months. Temperatures drop to 8 to 16 degrees, requiring a good jacket, but hotel prices fall 25 to 40% from the summer highs. If you want maximum value without January's snow, October is your target.
But then we hit December, and December breaks every single rule of the pricing algorithm.
December is a complete logistical anomaly. It is the single most magical month to see Budapest, and it is simultaneously the most expensive.
Because the entire city transforms into a Christmas market.
Exactly. The primary market at Vörösmarty Square, plus the secondary markets at the Basilica, run from mid-November through the New Year.
It's beautiful.
The city leans into the winter aesthetic perfectly. Architectural lighting illuminates the grand boulevards. There is a massive ice skating rink in front of Városligget Castle and City Park. And the smell of chimney cake and mulled wine is just everywhere.
But you paid dearly for that magic.
You do.
Yeah.
The sheer volume of European tourists flying in for weekend market breaks pushes accommodation to its absolute annual zenith. Remember that 4-star room that was €110 in March?
Yeah.
In the second week of December, that exact same room commands €190 to €230.
Which brings up a critical warning specifically for 2026.
Yes. Because the 6th District Airbnb ban took effect at the start of 2026, the overall supply of beds in Central Pest is structurally tighter than it was in 2023 or 2024.
Less inventory to go around, right?
Right. When you combine that reduced supply with the massive spike in December demand, it creates a severe bottleneck. You cannot wait until October to book a December trip anymore. You need to be securing rooms at least 3 months out.
Okay, so you've navigated the calendar, you chose your month, you booked your room. The day finally arrives and your plane touches down. Let's walk through the actual mechanics of arrival, because those first few hours dictate the momentum of the entire trip.
Most international travelers arrive at Budapest Ferenc Liszt International Airport, airport code BUD. It sits about 22 kilometers southeast of the city center.
And what airlines fly there?
It operates as a massive hub for European low-cost carriers. Wizz Air heavily dominates the tarmac here, heavily supported by Ryanair, EasyJet, Eurowings, and Elite.
If you are already in Europe, getting to Budapest is absurdly cheap. If you are flying out of London Luton or Stansted in the shoulder season, you can easily find return flights for £50 to £120.
For long-haul travelers, particularly from the U.S., the logistics require a bit more patience. Direct transatlantic flights are quite rare, meaning you will almost certainly be connecting through a major European hub like London, Frankfurt, or Amsterdam before making the final hop into BUD.
So you land, you clear customs, you grab your bags, and you walk through the sliding glass doors into the arrivals hall. How do you actually get into the city? Because this is where people make their very first brilliant logistical move or their very first expensive mistake. I want to talk about the 100E Airport Express bus.
The 100E bus is a masterclass in civic transit infrastructure. It is arguably the best value airport transfer in any European capital.
How much is it?
It costs a flat rate of €2,200 to €2,500 forint, which converts to roughly €5 to €6.50. The buses are modern. They depart every 7 to 8 minutes from 5 a.m. until midnight, and they take you straight into the absolute heart of Pest, terminating at Diákferenc in about 40 to 45 minutes.
But there is a very specific ticketing trap here that catches people out.
Yes. The 100E operates on a completely separate fare structure from the rest of the Budapest transit system. You cannot use a standard single ticket, and you cannot use a multi-day travel card.
Right. You need a specific ticket.
You must purchase the specific 2,500 forint airport shuttle ticket. Do not try to sneak on with a regular ticket. The 100E is heavily policed by ticket inspectors, and they have zero sympathy for confused tourists.
Now, obviously, the alternative to the bus is a taxi. You walk out to the official faux taxi rank, and we will definitely discuss the severe dangers of unofficial taxis later. But an official metered faux taxi into the center costs between 8,500 and 10,500 forint. That's about 22 to 27 euros, and it takes 25 to 35 minutes, depending on traffic.
Exactly.
But here's my question. If you have just flown 10 hours from New York, connected through Frankfurt, and your brain is completely fried by jet lag, is the 100E bus really the smart move? Isn't paying 25 euros for a taxi just a completely justifiable mental health tax?
It absolutely is, and it really comes down to basic math and energy management.
Right.
If you are traveling solo, yes, the €6 bus is a triumphant saving. But if you are a couple, you are comparing 13 euros for 2 bus tickets versus 25 euros for a taxi.
That's a tiny difference.
For a 12 euro difference, the taxi provides immediate door-to-door, climate-controlled relief straight to your hotel lobby. You don't have to navigate a new subway map or drag roller bags over cobblestones while exhausted. It is often the smartest 25 euros you will spend on the entire trip.
And once you are in that taxi, looking out the window, the geography starts to reveal itself. Let's talk about the visual impact of arrival, because whether your hotel is on the Pest side or the Buda side completely changes your first impression of the city.
The contrast is magnificent. If your taxi routes you into Pest, the flat eastern grid, you are immediately struck by a sense of sheer imperial ambition.
Yeah, the scale of it.
The architecture here is heavily defined by the late 19th century Habsburg building boom.
For anyone trying to visualize this, what does Habsburg building boom actually mean when you were just walking down the street?
It means scale and massive ornamentation. Picture massive 5- and 6-story stone facades lining wide boulevards. Picture intricate wrought iron balconies, towering double doors carved from heavy wood, and entire blocks designed to project power and wealth.
Just showing off, basically.
Exactly, built specifically to prove that Budapest was an equal peer to Vienna. The ultimate expression of this is the Hungarian Parliament building sitting right on the banks of the Danube. With its spires and massive central dome, it is undeniably one of those staggering pieces of civic architecture on Earth.
And it hits completely different at night. The moment you walk out onto the chain bridge at dusk, look across the black water of the river and see the Parliament lit up in gold on one side and Buda Castle glowing on the hill on the other. That is the precise moment the jet lag fades and you realize why this city is so legendary.
But if your taxi crossed the river and dropped you in Buda, your arrival feels totally different.
How so?
Buda is vertical. It's built on hills, heavily forested in parts, and generally much quieter. You aren't confronted with grand boulevards. You are greeted by winding roads leading up to Castle Hill or Gellert Hill. Buda feels residential, affluent, and slow.
Which dictates the rhythm of your trip. If I could script the perfect 24-hour arrival arc for a first-timer, I think it looks exactly like this. You land in the afternoon, you take the official taxi or the 100-li bus, you drop your bags in a central Pest hotel.
Good start.
You immediately walk to the Danube at dusk to see the city lights turn on. You find a warm, brick-vaulted cellar restaurant and eat a heavy bowl of goulash with a glass of Tokaji wine for about 25 euros. You sleep for 10 hours. And at 10 a.m. the next morning, you are floating in a 1918 thermal bath, staring at mosaic tiles, completely resetting your nervous system.
If you execute that 24-hour arc, you will completely understand the gravitational pull of Budapest in 2026.
But to execute it, you need to know exactly where to drop your bags. So let's talk accommodation zones. Because if the 100E bus drops everyone off at Dékferenktér, does that make Central Pest the default place to stay, or are people dispersing from there?
They absolutely disperse, and understanding the zones is critical. Choosing your district in Budapest is like choosing between Manhattan and Brooklyn.
That's a great comparison.
It fundamentally dictates your commute, your noise level, and your access to late-night food. We divide the city into 3 distinct accommodation zones.
Let's start with Zone 1, Central Pest. This encompasses districts V, 6, and 7.
Zone 1 is the undisputed tourist core. District V is the inner city, hugging the river. This is where you find St. Stephen's Basilica, the Parliament, and the pristine pedestrian zones.
Right.
District 6, Tesvaros, features the Opera and Andrassy Avenue. And again, this is a zone where Airbnbs have been banned. District 7th, Ersevitvaros, is the historic Jewish quarter and the epicenter of the ruin bar nightlife.
So if you stay in Zone 1, you are buying ultimate convenience. You walk out your hotel door and you are instantly in the mix.
Yes. Zone 1 is designed for first-timers, solo travelers, and anyone who despises commuting while on vacation. But the trade-off is noise and density.
Which leads us to Zone 2 across the river. The Buda side, Districts 1 and 2.
District I contains the historic Castle District, while District 2 stretches into leafy, affluent residential hills. Zone 2 is the domain of high-end luxury hotels and families who prioritize silence.
The quieter side.
You stay here if your dream morning involves waking up, opening a window, and looking down over the Danube River toward the Parliament building.
But the friction point is the river itself, isn't it? If you're staying in Buda, but all the great ruin bars and cutting-edge restaurants are in District 7 Pest, aren't you just forcing yourself to commute across a bridge twice a day?
You are. And that daily logistical friction is why many younger travelers abandon Buda after their first trip. It is beautiful, but it is deeply impractical if your goal is to explore the culinary and nightlife scenes.
Finally, we have Zone 3, Southern Pest, encompassing Districts 8 and X.
This is the frontier of value. The Corvin Quarter in District 8 and the Radai Udka Quarter in District 9 are rapidly gentrifying. They offer excellent metro access into the center, but at significantly lower price points.
Who stays there mostly?
This zone is heavily favored by digital nomads and longer-stay visitors who want neighborhood authenticity without the Zone 1 premium.
All right, let's attach some hard 2026 numbers to these zones. Where do the backpackers go?
For backpackers, traditional hostel dorms in Central Pest are thriving, especially as the budget Airbnbs vanish. Maverick City Lodge in District V is a staple, offering immaculately clean dorm beds for 18 to 28 euros a night in the shoulder season.
That's super cheap.
Wombat City Hostel in District 7th is massive, highly social, and runs dorms from 20 to 30 euros. If you age out of dorms but want the hostel vibe, a private room in these spaces runs 55 to 85 euros.
Okay, but what about the mid-range couples? Because from the data we're looking at, this specific demographic seems to unlock a level of value that just breaks the European matrix.
I call it the mid-range value chasm. This is the specific tier where Budapest dominates the continent. Let me give you an example.
Please do.
Look at Hotel Moments Budapest on Andresi Avenue in District 6. It is a gorgeous 4-star property, perfectly located, breakfast included. In the shoulder season, it costs 110 to 160 euros a night. Estilo Fashion Hotel in District V runs 95 to 140 euros.
I have to mention the Casati Budapest Hotel in District 6. It runs 130 to 180 euros a night. You are staying inside a modernized 18th century building with incredible boutique design. If you picked up that exact hotel and dropped it into central Vienna, it would easily command 350 euros a night. Here, it's under 180.
That is the mid-range chasm at work. Now, for families, the strategy shifts. Space and quiet become more important than being next door to a ruined bar.
Right, you probably don't want to push a stroller through District 7th at 2.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Families often look toward District 2nd in Buda. The Novotel Budapest City offers large family rooms for 130 to 180 euros per night, with nearby parks.
What about apartments?
Alternatively, if a family wants a kitchen and a washing machine, they need an apartment. Since District 6 is banned, they must look to districts of C or 7th, where a spacious 2-bedroom apartment realistically budgets at 120 to 200 euros per night.
And finally, the luxury bracket. Where do you stay if budget is entirely secondary?
The luxury properties here are historic and staggering. Hotel Clark Budapest is a brilliant, adults-only boutique sitting right at the foot of the chain bridge on the Buda side. Depending on the room, it runs 140 to 340 euros, offering incredible rooftop views.
Sounds amazing.
The Mathilde Palace in Central Pest, which is a meticulously restored Belle Epoque masterpiece, runs 380 to 650 euros a night.
But the crown jewel is the Four Seasons Gresham Palace, right?
Unquestionably. It sits at the end of the chain bridge on the Pest side, inside an Art Nouveau masterpiece. It is widely considered one of the finest hotel properties in all of Europe, running 550 to 900 euros per night.
And regardless of whether you are in an 18-euro dorm or a 900-euro suite, everyone pays the exact same tourist tax at checkout.
Yes, 1,000 Hungarian forint, or 2.50 euros per person per night. It is a flat civic fee added to your final bill.
So your bags are unpacked, you know what zone you're in. The next logical step is to walk out the door and find something to eat. Let's explore the food scene, because Hungarian cuisine has this incredible, stubborn resilience.
That is the perfect word for it. In cities like Prague or Krakow, you often see the local food heavily flattened or diluted to appease cautious Western tourist palates.
Exactly, it gets watered down.
Budapest has largely refused to do that. Hungarian food remains rich, unapologetically meat-heavy, deeply reliant on sour cream, and aggressively paprika-forward. They are cooking for themselves, and tourists are simply welcome to join the table.
Let's talk about the heavy hitters. You are looking at proper goulash, which, by the way, is traditionally a soup here, not a heavy stewed chicken paprikash stuffed cabbage and longos. But what does it actually cost to sit down and eat these dishes in 2026?
The value remains spectacular at the mid-range level. If you walk into a traditional brick-cellar restaurant with checkered tablecloths, a proper bowl of goulash will cost 2,500 to 3,500 forint. That is roughly 6 to 9 euros.
That's a great deal.
A massive plate of chicken paprikash served over nokedli dumplings, which are similar to spatzel, runs 3,500 to 5,000 forint, or 9 to 12 euros.
And if you want the premium local meats,
You order the Mangalka pork. It is a heritage Hungarian breed, incredibly marbled and flavorful. A main course of Mangalka at a nice bistro runs 5,500 to 8,000 forints, so 14 to 20 euros.
and the wine.
The alcohol pricing perfectly supports a long dinner. A generous glass of complex Hungarian wine like an Igri Bikavér Red or a dry Tokaji Ferment White costs just 3 to 5 euros. Half liter of draft beer is 2 to 3.5 euros.
So let's add that up. Two people sit down, they share a starter, they both order heavy traditional mains, they share a dessert, and they drink a full bottle of good local wine. What is the final damage?
For a full 3-course dinner for 2 with wine at a very solid mid-range restaurant, The total bill will land between 22,000 and 32,000 forint. That equates to 55 to 80 euros total. For two people,
Wow.
it is a phenomenal culinary return on investment.
The street food is equally compelling, both in taste and price. We have to explain langos because it is the ultimate comfort food.
Langos is essentially a massive disc of deep-fried flatbread. When it comes out of the oil, they rub it with raw garlic, slather it with sour cream, and bury it under a mountain of grated cheese.
It sounds incredible.
It is a glorious calorie bomb, and it costs 1,500 to 2,500 forint at a street stall.
You also have kircheskalaks, or chimney cake. It's a sweet dough wrapped around a wooden cylinder, roasted over coals until the sugar caramelizes, and coated in cinnamon or walnuts. That runs 1,800 to 2,800 forint. And if you want the ultimate concentration of this food culture, you have to navigate the Central Market Hall.
Ági Vazar Sarnak. It is a massive, cavernous, cast-iron structure built in 1897. The ground floor is endless aisles of butchers selling paprika-dusted sausages and vendors selling massive strings of dried red peppers.
It's a sensory overload.
Totally. But the upper mezzanine is where the food stalls operate, serving hot, authentic home cooking.
But there is a massive logistical catch to eating there, right?
Yes, the seating infrastructure on the mezzanine is woefully inadequate for the volume of tourists it attracts. If you arrive at 1 p.m, you will find yourself standing shoulder to shoulder in a suffocating crowd, trying to eat hot goulash out of a paper bowl while being jostled.
That sounds stressful.
The trick is to go at 11:30 a.m. You beat the tour bus wave, secure a table, and eat a fantastic lunch for 6 to 10 euros in peace.
Let's name a few specific reliable spots for the listener to drop into their map.
Ghetto Goulias in District 7 is exceptional. They serve a rich, authentic goulash for around 3,200 forint and specialize in traditional stews.
Any good fast casual spots?
If you want high-quality street food, Boar's Gastrobar is legendary for incredible, inventive soups and sandwiches for just 5 to 7 euros. Menza, located on Listfrankter, does a brilliant job of modernizing Hungarian classics in a retro 1970s dining room, with mains running 12 to 18 euros.
We also have to mention the New York Cafe. You see it on every travel brochure. It bills itself as the most beautiful cafe in the world, and walking inside is literally like stepping into a Baroque palace dripping in gold leaf and frescoes. But is the food actually worth it?
You are not paying for the culinary innovation at the New York Cafe. You are paying an entry fee for the architectural drama. A slice of cake will cost 10 to 15 euros, and a coffee is 6 to 8 euros.
Definite tourist markup.
It is undeniable tourist pricing. But it is worth doing precisely once, purely to sit in that room and absorb the history of the intellectual and literary culture that once thrived there.
What if you aren't eating out? If you booked an apartment and just want to cook a few meals to save cash?
The grocery infrastructure is robust. You will see Western chains like Spar, Tesco, Aldi, and Lidl everywhere, alongside Hungarian chains like CBA and Coop.
And what are the prices like?
In 2026, grocery prices look like this. A liter of milk is 350 to 450 forint. A loaf of fresh bread is 500 to 900 forint. A highly drinkable bottle of Hungarian wine is 1,800 to 3,500 forint.
Very reasonable.
Pasta is cheap at 350 to 500 forint, and a dozen eggs run 1,000 to 1,400 forint. If you self-cater breakfast and lunch, your food budget drops to 8 to 15 euros per day.
Let's talk about the etiquette of paying those restaurant bills, because tipping culture in Europe is highly fractured, and Budapest has a very specific system.
The primary rule is to look at the bottom of your receipt for the words servizdíj. That translates to service charge. Increasingly, Central Pest restaurants automatically apply a 10 to 15% servizdíj to the final bill.
So you don't double tip.
Right. If you see that word, you do not need to leave anything extra. If the bill does not include it, leaving a 10 to 12% tip in cash or asking the waiter to add it to the card terminal is expected.
Just don't leave cash on the table.
Exactly. Do not simply leave cash on the table and walk away. The custom is to hand the tip directly to the waiter during the payment exchange.
Another cultural note is the pacing. If you are coming from the US, you are used to waiters trying to turn your table over the second you swallow your last bite. Budapest is a sitting city.
Very much so.
If you order a single espresso, you can sit at that cafe table reading a book for an hour, and nobody will hand you a bill until you explicitly ask for it. It is considered rude to rush a guest. Also, while smoking is strictly banned indoors everywhere, it is deeply ingrained in the culture and ubiquitous on the outdoor terraces.
Yeah, be prepared for that.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We know where the good food is, but we must discuss the most notorious culinary trap in the city, Váci Utka. It is the primary pedestrian shopping street in Pest, And if you sit down at a restaurant there, you're going to pay 18 euros for a bowl of goulash that costs 8 euros, literally 2 streets away.
Oh, easily.
My question is, how does a place like Váci Utca physically survive in 2026? Everyone has a smartphone. Everyone can check reviews in 3 seconds. How are they still finding victims?
They survive on the psychological reality of convenience fatigue. When you have thousands of tourists funneled down a single attractive pedestrian corridor for hours, a certain percentage of them will just hit a wall of exhaustion.
Their feet hurt.
Their feet hurt, they're hungry, and they simply sit down at the first illuminated menu they see. They don't want to cross-reference maps. They are paying a 70% markup purely to stop making decisions.
That's a fair point.
The menus are often English, only with glossy photos, a massive red flag. The fix is incredibly simple. Turn 90 degrees, walk 2 blocks east toward the Jewish Quarter, or 1 block west toward the Danube, and the pricing instantly reverts to genuine local reality.
All right, we have detailed the hotel costs and the restaurant menus. Let's synthesize this. Let's walk through the actual out-of-pocket daily budgets. How much cash is actually leaving your bank account on an average day?
Let's build 3 distinct traveler profiles to show exactly how the math scales. We will start with the floor, the low budget, or the backpacker. For this profile, you are spending 45 to 75 euros per day.
Walk me through a 60 euro day in Budapest.
You wake up in a central pest hostel dorm, which costs 23 euros. You grab a pastry and coffee from a corner bakery for 4 euros. For lunch, you walk to the Central Market Hall and eat a massive longos for 6 euros.
Sounds like a great start.
In the afternoon, you use a 2 euro transit ticket to get to the city park, and you walk around the free architectural sites. For dinner, you hit a working-class bistro for sausage and a beer for 12 euros. At night, you buy 2 beers at a ruined bar for 6 euros.
Wow.
And you still have 7 euros left over,
That's right.
which you slowly accumulate over the week to pay for one 44 euro entry ticket to the Szechenyi baths.
That is a staggering realization. For 60 euros a day, you are eating hot, traditional meals, drinking legendary venues, and soaking in the thermal baths. That exact same itinerary in Amsterdam or London would cost you 150 to 180 euros, and you'd likely be eating out of a convenience store to achieve it.
Exactly. But where the math becomes truly disruptive to the European market is the mid-range budget. This is the mid-range value chasm we discussed earlier.
Okay, build the day for the mid-range couple.
For an individual mid-range traveler, the daily spend is 113 to 173 euros. For a couple combined, it is 226 to 346 euros per day.
Give me the breakdown.
You wake up in a beautiful, historic 4-star hotel in District 6. Half of that room cost is 65 euros per person. Breakfast is included. You take a guided tour of the Parliament building for 15 euros. You sit down for a 2-course lunch with a glass of wine for 20 euros.
Sounds lovely.
You buy a 72-hour transit card, so your daily transport cost breaks down to 5 euros. You pay 45 euros for expedited QR code entry into the Gellert baths, and you finish the day with a massive atmospheric dinner at a cellar restaurant, sharing a bottle of wine, which costs 35 euros per person.
Let's project that out. A full 7-day week for a couple, staying in 4-star luxury, eating sit-down meals twice a day, taking river cruises and spa days, cost roughly 1,580 to 2,420 euros total. If you try to replicate that exact week of fine dining and 4-star hotels in Paris, you are easily crossing 4,000 to 5,000 euros. It's an almost incomprehensible discount for the same quality of life.
Which is why the high budget, the luxury tier, is also exploding. At the luxury tier, you are spending 405 to 740 euros per person per day.
What does 740 euros a day actually buy you?
It buys you elite, world-class comfort. It covers your half of a suite at the Gresham Palace overlooking the Chain Bridge, which is 350 euros per person.
The peak of luxury.
It buys you a 120 euro Michelin-starred tasting menu at Stand. It buys private airport transfers and premium private wine tasting day trips to the Eger wine region. And remarkably, even at this elite tier, you are paying 30 to 40% less than you would for the equivalent luxury experience in Munich or Vienna.
There is one more demographic changing the financial landscape, the digital nomad. Because people aren't just coming for a weekend anymore, they're coming for a month.
The digital nomad influx is profoundly reshaping specific neighborhoods. A nomad looking for a month-long base will find furnished, one-bedroom apartments outside the band's 6th district, often in districts 8 or IX, for 700 to 1,100 euros a month.
And co-working spaces.
Add in a dedicated desk at a premium co-working space like Captar or Impact Hub for 120 to 220 euros.
And the digital infrastructure supports it perfectly. The fiber optic internet speeds in Budapest are consistently ranked among the fastest and most reliable in Europe.
When you factor in groceries, transit, and weekend entertainment, a digital nomad can live an incredibly comfortable, connected life for an all-in monthly cost of 1,400 to 2,100 euros.
That's a steal.
This influx is rapidly accelerating the gentrification of southern Pest. Cafes, specialty roasters, and international restaurants are springing up to service this specific mid-tier spending power.
So the economic value across every bracket is just undeniable. But here's the critical pivot. You can plan that budget down to the last euro, and you can blow it all in 5 minutes if you fall into one of the city's 3 main logistical traps.
So true.
These aren't abstract risks. These are specific, mechanized traps designed to separate you from your money. Let's break them down, starting with trap number 1, the airport taxi scam.
The mechanism of this scam is brilliantly simple, and it relies entirely on physical exhaustion. When you walk out of the customs hall at BED, before you even reach the exterior doors, unofficial drivers will approach you.
Are they pushy?
Not at all. They look very professional. They will ask if you need a taxi to the center, and they will quote a fixed rate of 15,000 to 25,000 forint. That is 38 to 63 euros.
Meanwhile, the legitimate metered-for taxi rank outside charges a maximum of around 10,500 forint, and the bus is 6.50 euros.
So why do people agree to pay over 60 euros?
Because of jet lag and currency confusion.
Yeah.
The scammer isn't aggressive. They just state a large number in a currency the tourist doesn't intuitively understand yet.
Right, the fork. Your brain hears 20,000 and panics trying to do the math. The driver smiles, takes your heavy bag, and says, it's about 50 euros. And because 50 euros for an airport taxi sounds entirely plausible if you're used to London or New York, you just nod and follow them to an unmarked car.
It is a brutal way to start a trip. You wake up the next morning, look at a currency converter, and realize you overpaid by 250% on your very first interaction.
The fix requires 30 seconds of discipline. Ignore anyone who approaches you inside the terminal. Walk straight through the sliding glass doors to the outside curb. You will immediately see a yellow booth marked for taxi with an organized line of yellow cabs or the clearly marked bus stop for the 100E.
Okay, trap number 2 is significantly more predatory. The ruin bar shot scam. This happens directly in the nightlife heart of District 7. Walk us through how this trap actually closes on someone.
The mechanism operates primarily along Kureli Utka and Kazinci Utka. You're walking down the street in the evening, and a pair of seemingly friendly English-speaking locals will approach you.
They just start chatting.
Yeah, they will strike up a casual conversation, ask where you are from, and eventually pitch an idea. You guys shouldn't go to Simple Kurt. It's just a massive tourist trap. We know a brilliant hidden ruin bar that only locals use just around the corner. Let's go get a drink.
And it works because it preys perfectly on the tourist ego. Nobody wants to be a tourist. Everyone wants the authentic, underground, local experience.
Exactly. They weaponize your desire for authenticity. They lead you off the main street and up a staircase into a small, sparsely decorated, unmarked bar. You sit down, the locals order a round of shots or drinks for the table. You drink them, having a great time. But there are no menus, and no prices displayed anywhere.
And then the trap springs.
The friendly locals suddenly excuse themselves to go to the bathroom and never return. 2 minutes later, a massive, intimidating bouncer drops a bill on your table. That single round of drinks, which should have cost 15 euros, is itemized at 40,000 to 80,000 forint, 100 to 200 euros.
It's terrifying.
If you argue, the bouncer physically blocks the door and the bartender demands your credit card.
The demographic data on who falls for this is fascinatingly specific.
Yes. Based on travel advisory spanning the last several years, this scam almost exclusively targets solo male travelers or small groups of men, typically between the ages of 20 and 40, operating between 8 p.m. and midnight.
It's totally targeted.
It targets the exact demographic most likely to follow strangers to a secondary location for a drink.
But how does this happen in 2026? How do these places operate so openly without the police immediately shutting them down?
Because they operate in a maddening jurisdictional gray area. Technically, in a free market, a private establishment can legally set the price of a shot of vodka at 50 euros.
Oh, I see.
If you consume the product without explicitly demanding to see a printed price list first, you have entered into a verbal contract. The police cannot arrest a bartender for overcharging you if you drank the drink.
So the only defense is absolute avoidance.
Do not follow unsolicited guides into unmarked bars. If you want a ruin bar experience, stick to the named, mapped, established venues with massive lines outside. Simple Kurt instant fogus, mazel tov, dobos. The fundamental rule of District 7th is this. The promise of the hidden local bar is almost always the scam itself.
All right, trap number 3 isn't a malicious scam. It is a massive, self-inflicted wound of time management, the bath ticket confusion.
This primarily occurs at the two most famous thermal baths, Szechenyi and Gellert. The ticketing system is fundamentally confusing. They operate a dual pricing model based on changing rooms.
Cabin versus locker, right.
You can buy a ticket with a cabin, which is a small private changing room you can lock, or a slightly cheaper ticket with a locker, where you change in a communal area.
And if you just walk up to the building at noon on a summer day and try to figure this out at the cashier window, you are doomed.
Imagine standing in a humid, echoing, tile hallway on an August Saturday. Because every single tourist in front of you is trying to understand the difference between a cabin and a locker in broken English, the line grinds to an absolute halt. You will stand in that line for 60 to 90 minutes.
Just to get in.
And you pay the walk-up rate of 13,200 to 14,200 forint, which is 33 to 36 euros.
Meanwhile, the smart traveler bypasses that entirely.
The smart money goes to the official website the night before and buys the expedited QR code ticket. It costs 44 to 49 euros, depending on whether it is a weekday or weekend. It is roughly 8 to 13 euros more expensive than the walk-up rate.
But it's worth it.
That QR code allows you to bypass the entire 90-minute queue and walk straight through a dedicated turnstile.
Your vacation time is objectively worth more than 8 euros an hour. Pay the premium.
And there is a secondary trap at the baths regarding towels, right?
Yes. Do not assume towels are provided like at a hotel pool. You must bring your own towel, or you will be forced to rent a highly abrasive, thin sheet at the bath for roughly 1,300 forint, plus a deposit. And the timing matters too.
Furthermore, if you want the best experience, you must master the timing. Arrive exactly when they open, usually between 7 a.m. and 9, or go late after 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Midday is when the massive tour groups descend, completely ruining the meditative atmosphere of the water.
So we've covered the specific, localized traps. But what about the macro safety profile of the city? When you look beyond the taxi drivers and the overpriced shots, how secure does Budapest actually feel when you are walking around?
It feels, and statistically is, incredibly secure. From a macro perspective, Budapest consistently ranks as one of the safest major capital cities in Europe. Violent street crime directed at tourists is genuinely rare.
That's reassuring.
The grand boulevards and the central pedestrian zones remain active, brightly lit, and heavily populated by locals and tourists alike well past midnight. The night bus and tram network is highly reliable and extensively used.
But you draw a very specific distinction in your research between physical safety and financial safety.
It is a vital distinction. Your physical body is extremely safe in Budapest. Your wallet, however, is subject to constant, low-level financial microaggressions if you aren't paying attention. We've mentioned the menu switching.
Right. You sit down near Vatya Upka, the waiter hands you a menu where the goulash is listed as 15. You assume it means 1,500 forint, which is a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
But when the bill arrives, you realize that 15 meant 15 euros, which is over 6,000 forint. Always verify the currency symbol before speaking to the waiter.
Then you have the ATM trap.
The freestanding Euronet machines.
Yes. Do not use freestanding ATMs with the Euronet branding or generic ATM signs bolted to the side of souvenir shops. They employ punishing exchange rates and hidden conversion surcharges that can bleed 10 to 12% of your cash value instantly.
So what's the alternative?
Only withdraw cash from ATMs physically embedded into the walls of actual recognized banks like OTP, Erste, or Raiffeisen.
But the most pervasive financial trap of all, the one that catches people multiple times a day, is DCC. Dynamic currency conversion on the card terminals.
This happens every time you tap your card at a restaurant or shop. The digital terminal will beep and present you with a choice. Do you want to be charged in your home currency like dollars or euros or in Hungarian forint?
It seems like a helpful service, but it's essentially a trap. Think of it like this. It's like a restaurant offering to translate their menu into English for you, but hiding a massive 7% surcharge on your entire meal just as a fee for doing the translation.
That's exactly what it is.
If you let their bank do the math, they fleece you. Always, unconditionally, press the button to pay in the local currency, the forint. Let your own bank handle the conversion.
Exactly. Moving beyond financial safety to specific demographics, the profile for solo female travelers is incredibly strong.
Is the culture generally welcoming for a woman traveling alone?
It is genuinely comfortable. The societal attitudes are relaxed, and solo dining in the evening is completely normalized in Central Pest. You won't be relegated to a dark corner near the kitchen.
And at night.
The public transit feels safe at night. The only geographical area requiring elevated situational awareness is the core of District 7th after midnight.
Because that's where the bachelor parties go.
Exactly. The Ruin Bar district transitions from a cultural hub into a very loud, rowdy, alcohol-heavy party zone late at night. Venues like Simple Kurt remain safe because they are heavily secured and populated, but a solo traveler should avoid wandering down unlit side streets in that specific district late at night, purely due to the unpredictable nature of heavily intoxicated crowds.
What about families with young kids? Budapest feels very monumental and stone-heavy. Is it accessible?
Surprisingly, yes, especially in Pest. The grid system and wide boulevards of Pest make it entirely stroller-friendly, unlike the cobblestone hills of Buda or Prague.
And it's affordable for kids.
Financially, it's brilliant for families because the thermal baths and public transit offer massive discounts, often 50 to 70% off for children.
Plus, there are activities.
You have fantastic physical infrastructure for kids. The Budapest Zoo is historic and excellent, the Palace of Miracles is a massive interactive science center, and Margaret Island is essentially a massive, car-free park floating in the middle of the river with a petting zoo and wide bike paths.
And the medical infrastructure is strong if an emergency happens.
Very strong. Semmelweis University Hospital anchors a highly developed medical network, and there are numerous English-speaking private clinics available for fast, high-quality care. But there's one crucial, non-negotiable safety warning for families and really any traveler regarding the physical environment.
The summer heat warning.
We touched on this, but it cannot be overstated. The historic tenement buildings in Pest are constructed from massive blocks of stone and brick. They act like thermal batteries.
Right.
During a July heat wave, the daytime heat bakes into the stone, and at night, that heat radiates inward. If you rent a historic apartment without air conditioning, the interior temperature will routinely exceed 30 degrees Celsius at midnight. It is suffocating.
You cannot just open a window and hope for a breeze.
There is no breeze in a central Pest courtyard. It is stagnant air. You must actively confirm in writing that your hotel or Airbnb has functioning air conditioning before booking a summer trip. Trying to sleep in a 32-degree room will ruin your trip faster than any scam.
With the logistics, the budgets, and the safety protocols firmly in our back pocket, let's get into the emotional core of the trip. Let's talk about the moments that actually make this trip unforgettable and the ones that might genuinely let you down, the highs and the lows. Expert, give me the absolute pinnacle experience.
The highest high you can achieve in Budapest is a quiet weekday morning at the Rudas thermal bath. I want to describe the exact sensory experience. You arrive on a Tuesday morning, you pay your €16 entry fee, you navigate the modern locker rooms, and walk through a heavy door into the main chamber.
And you are instantly transported to the 1500s.
You step into an octagonal stone chamber built during the Ottoman occupation of Hungary. The air is thick, humid, and smells faintly of sulfur and ancient stone. Massive stone pillars support a vaulted dome overhead. That dome is pierced with small, star-shaped cutouts, filled with colored glass. As the morning sun rises outside, sharp beams of colored light pierce the steam and strike the dark water of the 38-degree pool.
It sounds almost religious.
It is deeply meditative. There are perhaps 5 other people in the pool. The only sound is the echoing drip of condensation falling from the stone arches. You're soaking in a piece of living history, utilizing the exact same architectural space that residents of the city have used for 4.5 centuries. There is absolutely no equivalent to that experience in London or Paris.
Another massive high, which costs absolutely nothing, is the visual impact of the Danube at dusk. You walk out to the middle of the chain bridge just as the sun drops behind the Buda Hills. The sky turns deep purple, and then, all at once, the massive architectural lighting of the Parliament building clicks on. It turns the entire facade into this glowing, golden monument reflecting perfectly on the Black River. It is arguably the best urban vista in Europe, and wonderfully, it remains relatively unruined by the throngs of travel influencers that have completely congested places like the Charles Bridge in Prague.
And we must include a culinary high point. The experience of walking down into a vaulted brick cellar restaurant like Kispiak Bistro or Kistıksuk on a cool autumn evening. You sit down and they bring you a heavy ceramic bowl of authentic goulash.
The real deal.
The authentic version is thick with root vegetables, tender beef, and an incredibly rich, deep red paprika broth. You pair it with a glass of robust red wine, and the entire sensory experience costs you €15. It completely rewrites your understanding of what comfort food is.
But we promised a brutally honest deep dive, which means we must pivot to the honest disappointments. And we've touched on the biggest one already. Vaci Utka.
Vaci Utka is a disappointment, not just because it is overpriced, but because it is culturally barren. It has been comprehensively absorbed by the international tourist supply chain. You're looking at the exact same global chain stores, the exact same mass-produced souvenirs, and the exact same diluted, overpriced restaurants you find in any major European artery.
So what is the play? Do you just avoid it entirely?
You walk down it for exactly 5 minutes to admire the architecture of the building facades above the storefronts, and then you leave. Do not eat there, do not shop there. Because the irony is that every genuinely fascinating independent boutique or authentic local restaurant in Central Pest is located literally 2 or 3 blocks away from Vaci Utka, just on the quieter side streets.
The second major disappointment is going to shock some people because we highlighted it as famous earlier, Simplekert, the original legendary ruin bar. Why is it on the disappointment list for 2026?
Because it is a fascinating case study in the life cycle of a tourist attraction. Simplekert began in the early 2000s as a genuinely radical underground counterculture movement. Artists took over a derelict, roofless tenement building saved from demolition, filled it with mismatched junk furniture, and created an organic community space.
But that was 20 years ago.
Exactly. Today, it has transitioned from organic counterculture into a highly managed, corporatized photo op. It is essentially an amusement park of its former self. On a Friday night, you will stand in a queue for 45 minutes just to get past the bouncers. Inside, you are fighting through dense crowds of British stag parties to buy a beer that is significantly more expensive than the city average. The entire atmosphere has become performative.
So if Simplekert is performative, does that mean the entire ruin bar concept is dead? Is the era over?
The era isn't over, it has just evolved and fractured. The contrast is what is striking. You go from the meditative silence of the Rudas bath to the screaming, chaotic energy of Simplekert, and you realize Simpla is no longer Hungarian, it is international.
So where do you go instead?
The advice is this. Go to Simplekert once, ideally at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday, purely to walk through and photograph the visually stunning, chaotic aesthetic of the rooms. It is historically important. But when you actually want to drink and socialize at night, leave. Go to places like Fogus, Mazel Tov, or Dobaz, where the venues are slightly more polished and the crowd still includes actual Hungarian locals, rather than just a concentration of tourists shouting over the music.
Wait, there is one more disappointment to flag. The food outside the central districts. If I want the real, unvarnished local experience, shouldn't I take the metro out to District 13 or 14 to find a hidden culinary gem where grandmothers are cooking? Why is that a bad idea?
Because of the legacy of the communist era. During the decades of state control, the restaurant industry was nationalized. The focus was on mass-producing calories in canteens, not on culinary art.
Oh, that makes sense.
The modern gastronomic revival in Budapest, the place's rescuing 19th century bourgeois recipes, is heavily concentrated in the central districts. If you wander aimlessly into the deep outer residential districts, expecting to stumble upon a hidden Michelin-level grandmother, you are highly likely to walk into a surviving communist-era style cafeteria. The food will be cheap and edible, but it will be heavy, bland, and entirely unnotable. Budapest rewards targeted, research dining, not aimless wandering.
Which is exactly why having a map of specific named recommendations is so crucial here. Now, if these traps and disappointments sound like they might throw off your vibe, how does Budapest actually stack up against its closest geographical rivals? We need to look at the alternatives, because anyone planning a trip to Central Europe is ultimately choosing between the triangle: Budapest, Prague, and Vienna. Let's start with alternative 1, Prague.
Prague is the Central European classic. It is a 5 to 6 hour train ride northwest of Budapest. When you choose Prague, you are choosing an entirely different architectural philosophy. Prague was largely untouched by WWII bombing, meaning its medieval core, the Old Town Square, the astronomical clock, the Charles Bridge is uniformly preserved. It looks like a fairy tale.
But because it looks like a fairy tale, the entire world wants to see it.
Exactly. The tourist density in Prague's Old Town is suffocating compared to Budapest. You are packed shoulder to shoulder on those narrow medieval streets. And the economic reality has shifted drastically. Prague is no longer a budget destination. In 2026, Prague is 30 to 40% more expensive than Budapest across the board. That 4-star hotel that costs 80 to 140 euros in Budapest will run you 150 to 220 euros in central Prague.
So how do you make the decision?
You choose Prague if your absolute priority is walking through a concentrated, highly preserved medieval city center, and you are deeply invested in traditional Bohemian beer hall culture. You choose Budapest if grand 19th century architecture, thermal baths, and the vast economic value matter more to you than medieval cobblestones.
Okay, alternative 2 is Vienna, a 2.5-hour train ride away, the other half of the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
They are siblings separated at birth. They share the same grand boulevards and the same cafe culture DNA. But as we discussed, Vienna took the Western economic path. Vienna today is vastly more polished, pristine, and visibly wealthy. The streets are immaculate, the classical music pedigree is unmatched, and the imperial palaces are perfectly manicured.
But the financial premium you pay for that polish is severe.
It is the most expensive of the three. Accommodation in Vienna is 60 to 80% higher than in Budapest. Food is roughly 40 to 60% higher. You are paying Western European premium rates.
So if you're a listener and you're staring at a train schedule showing Vienna's only 2.5 hours away, is it a mistake to just pick one? Should you just be doing both?
It is actually the most highly recommended itinerary for this region. Booking a Twin City trip is incredibly logistically easy via the railjet train. And the contrast is what makes the trip profound. You spend 3 days in Vienna absorbing pristine imperial wealth and Mozart, and then you take a short train ride and spend 3 days in Budapest absorbing raw history, ruined bars, and thermal baths at half the price. They are the perfect complementary experience.
We have dissected the costs, the calendars, the architectural history, the traps, and the alternatives. It is time to bring it all together for the final verdict. We are going to run the Is It Worth It matrix for 5 distinct traveler demographics. Expert, walk us through the final synthesis based on the 2026 data.
Synthesizing this matrix reveals something that is exceptionally rare in global travel. It is highly unusual for a single city to score a definitive yes across 5 completely disparate demographic brackets. But Budapest achieves exactly that.
Let's hit them one by one, starting with the baseline, the backpacker.
Yes. It offers unbeatable Western European value. For 45 to 75 euros a day, a backpacker gets a high-quality central hostel, massive place of authentic street food, and access to a world-famous nightlife scene. The value proposition here is untouched. The only caveat: they must maintain discipline and stick strictly to the named ruin bars to avoid the shot scams.
Demographic 2, the mid-range couple.
Yes. And this is the absolute strongest verdict in the entire matrix. 226 to 346 euros combined per day, a couple unlocks 4-star boutique hotels, historic spa access, and fine dining with wine. They achieve a lifestyle that is 45% cheaper than Paris or Vienna. The strategy is to book in the shoulder seasons of May or September and completely avoid the Seagate Festival week. While the 6th District Airbnb ban is pushing hotel prices up slightly, it has not yet eroded the core value differential.
Demographic 3, the family.
Yes, with conditions. The conditions are entirely logistical. Families must confirm air conditioning if traveling in the summer to avoid the tenement heat traps. Because of the Airbnb ban in District 6, they should target apartment rentals in Districts 4 to 6 for kitchen access, or book hotels in the quieter, greener District 2 in Buda. If they utilize Market Island and the bath discounts, the city delivers incredible family value.
Demographic 4.
Luxury. Yes. The luxury tier in Budapest is arguably one of the most undervalued markets in Europe. Booking properties like the Gresham Palace or Matilde Palace delivers a tier of elite historic luxury that is entirely comparable to Munich or Vienna, but at a 30 to 40% discount on the ticket price.
And finally, demographic 5, the digital nomad or solo traveler.
Yes. Budapest sits firmly in the top 3 nomad destinations in Europe right now, alongside Lisbon and Tallinn. At 1,400 to 2,100 euros a month all in, you get excellent fiber internet, thriving co-working spaces, and brilliant cafe infrastructure. And, ironically, the 6th District Airbnb ban is actually benefiting nomads because property owners who can no longer rent to weekend tourists are shifting their apartments back onto a long-term lease market, stabilizing month-to-month rents.
It is a clean sweep across the board. Every single demographic finds overwhelming value here.
It is a clean sweep today. But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you look at your calendar. We've talked extensively about the 2026 policy shifts. With the 6th District Airbnb ban setting a massive European precedent and hotel prices already firming upwards to absorb that displaced demand, a very real question emerges. Are we actively witnessing the final golden years of Budapest as a true, undisputed budget capital? Will this structural shift in how the city manages tourism push it across the threshold, inevitably transforming it into the next Barcelona or Lisbon? The math is still heavily in your favor today, but 2026 feels like the crucial closing window to visit before the economic reality of Budapest fundamentally changes forever.
That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.